Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Additionally, the agendas and minutes for prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agendas presented or amended by the Planning Commission. The roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes Planning Commission. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. And the other individuals seated at the table this evening are representatives of the city planning department and the city attorney's office. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward when recognized and provide your name and address on a sign-on sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones, tablets, or any other devices that might disrupt this meeting, please either be placed in silent mode or turned off. The roll call, Ms. Arnett, please.
Mr. Appidian.
Here.
Ms. Cruz.
Here.
Mr. Edmonds.
Here.
Mr. Faison.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Krantz.
Here.
Ms. Krupa. Mr. Zanzika.
Here.
Mr. Tagle.
Here.
Ms. Howe. Here.
Quorum present. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? Mr. Faison, a second. Mr. Tagle. Roll call, Ms. Arnett, please.
Ms. Cruz.
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krantz.
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Appidian.
Yes. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes for the meeting on June 13, 2017. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please? Mr. Edmonds,
Move to approve.
second. Mr. Stanzika, second. Roll call, Ms. Arnett, please.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krantz.
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Appidian.
Yes.
Ms. Cruz.
Yes.
Item number 4 on the agenda is public comment for items not on the agenda tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 5 on the agenda. Planned Unit Development Application, file number PUD JPLN 2016-0029. Proposed Troy Crossing, north side of Big Beaver, east of John R. Parcels 88-20-24-352-024, 025, 026, 027, 028, and 041. Section 24, currently zoned PUD 8, Planned Unit Development 8 District. Mr. Sullivan.
That's easy for you to say. Wow, that was impressive. So obviously Ben's not here, so I'll be flying solo. Hopefully I can remember how to use this thing. So this property is 4.77 acres. It's located on the north side of Big Beaver, a little bit east of John R. The property is outlined in red, and it is presently actually zoned PUD. There was a planned unit development that was approved for this parcel about a decade ago. And we provided a plan in a previous packet, but essentially the plan proposed retail along the frontage here. There was a drive-through over here, and there was townhomes and a central water feature with attached housing. And the property has changed hands a couple times, and Brian Nager now owns the property. And he likes the concept of, I don't want to speak for Brian, but he's here this evening. He supports the general concept of the mix of retail and residential behind, but he doesn't feel that the residential product is really marketable. So he's proposed a revision, including still retail on the front. He's eliminated a drive-through that was to the west, and proposed apartments to replace the townhomes. I'm going to pull up a rendering here. I think this does the best job. Proposing retail in the front, 4 apartment buildings totaling 96 units, I believe. And we discussed this item at a number of somewhat informal meetings. You'll recall that he's modified the elevations. He got one of the meetings prior to the public hearing. He got a lot of feedback from the Planning Commission on the elevations, and he's bolstered those. He had a public hearing, and the focus, although we discussed a number of items at the public hearing, including the general layout and architecture, the discussion tended to focus on these. garages that are proposed. The applicant feels that in order to be marketable and competitive, he needs to provide covered parking, and with Michigan winters, you can certainly understand why. And he wants to put the covered parking in certain areas along the property line. And that tended to be most of the comments from neighbors, was a treatment of the relationship between the garages and the walls and the property. At the time, he proposed a mix, let me go back, mix of garages, here, and landscaping. Now, I should note that the only thing that differs in the site plan, the only thing that wasn't changed from the public hearing to today was the landscape treatment along the property lines. What he proposes, and I'll get to that in a second, pull up the site plan, but he proposes a mixture of garages and walls, as well as some area that is not proposed to have walls. What I would like to do is very early on, after I finish my presentation, Mr. Chairman, is give Mr. Nager an opportunity to discuss. If you remember, when we had a public hearing, we postponed the item. We wanted to give Mr. Nager an opportunity to meet with the neighbors and get their input, specifically to talk about the relationship between the garages, the property, and the homes. And he did so. And what I'd like him to do is briefly summarize the dialogue that took place, and get him to kind of explain how he feels that the treatment that he proposes meets kind of the dialogue that he had with the neighbors. What he proposes is shown in the site plan. So he proposes a combination, landscaping here, then garage, wall, garage, wall, garage, landscaping. So it's a combination of 3 different treatments. And again, I would ask Mr. Nager to kind of walk us through how he came up with that solution. So in terms of our recommendation, staff believes that we've discussed this application at great lengths, given the scale and the scope of it. And we believe that the layout and the site layout and the mix of uses is consistent with the intent of the master plan. It's consistent with the PUD that is currently approved for the site. We recommend approval, provided that the Planning Commission supports the treatment of the garage and the landscaping, subject to some conditions. One is to submit a revised landscape plan with the final site plan that's consistent with what we come up with this evening. They did not provide a landscape and open space calculation on the site plan. That's very simple. They can do that very, very easily. One of the things that they did is they bumped the garage, they moved it 3 feet off the property line. And the reason they did that is that provides 3 feet to the rear of the garages that they can use to maintain the building. If they have to fix the roof or fix bricks or paint or whatever, they can get to the back of the building. They don't propose, at this time, they don't propose any landscaping in that 3 feet. 3 feet's not a lot of room. You're really limited in terms of what type of plant you can plant there. And it also, what that does, if he plants it, it makes it hard to access the building with that space taken up by plants. So I think Brian Mr. Nager would tell you that they're not proposing any plant material back there. And finally, we want to talk about dumpsters. We had some suggestions related to door enclosures and lids and entrances and whatnot, and I'd have Brian speak to that. So that's our presentation, Mr. Chairman. I can answer any questions, and again, I would ask that Mr. Nager have an opportunity to present this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any questions for Mr. Sullivan? Yes, Ms. Cruz.
Behind the parking structure where the applicant does not wish to have landscaping for ease of access, for maintenance, what is going to be there then? Like grass?
Grass. It would be turf grass.
Turf grass?
Yes.
And if you can't see it, does that mean that they will also treat it for dandelions and weeds, and it'll be cut and it won't, you know, I mean, I don't want it to get sloppy looking because what's on the other side of that are people.
Yeah, so they would be responsible to maintain it, so they either would have to get back there and cut it, or they'd have to have an agreement with the neighbors that the neighbors would cut it. But it ultimately falls on the applicant to maintain that 3 feet.
Mr. Faison.
Do you know how many the neighbors spoke to the developer?
I was not present, the developer could speak to that.
And then was staff involved in any of those
No.
conversations, just one-on-one?
No, and the reason we don't get involved is we went to the first PUD, we attended one of those meetings, and it makes it very awkward for staff because it puts us in the position of appearing to be lobbying for the project, and that's not the intent. The intent is to get the applicant and the neighbors together and have dialogue, and when staff gets involved, it just becomes a strange dynamic. So we trust the process, and we
And the
trust.
process is for you not to be involved?
Exactly.
Okay, understood.
Mr. Tagle.
Is this, excuse me, is this view on the east and west garages where there's parking coming up to the backside?
This would be all
So
the
really,
garages.
this rendering is not quite accurate because there should be 3 feet of green between the pavement and the back of the,
It is a little misleading, it's a little misleading because it looks like there's parking right here.
right,
How this should be rendered is this green here should carry over
right.
into this whole area.
Thank you.
Good point. So, and this would be the front.
Right.
So not only does it provide covering for the automobiles, it provides security at night rather than just sitting there under a covering, it can be locked up.
Any other questions for Mr. Savana? If not, we will, the applicant is here.
Sure.
Would
You prefer I stand over there or here?
At the mic would be fine.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone again. And my name is Brian Nanger with Nanger Companies. We have discussed the project in detail, and you know, a lot of faces look familiar here with regards to this. And Brent, thanks for setting everything up. You know, we worked hard on this to get the correct design and put out a nice product. We've talked about the actual layout. We've eliminated drive-throughs. We've changed some materials in getting rid of some of this EFS material. We've talked about garages and landscaping, and you know, I guess some of the major sticking point up till now has been the garages. So what I did was I set up a meeting with the surrounding neighborhood. We took down some names and email addresses, and some of the neighbors were kind enough to gather some of the other neighbors. So we did a meeting at Starbucks on Big Beaver and John Ark, coincidentally. We had a good turnout, probably, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 people. And you know, some of them that actually bordered the development, some of them that were, you know, a few doors down, but they had some input as well. So from the input we received, you know, some people wanted a wall that was 12 feet high. You know, some people didn't want a wall at all. What we feel like we did here was try to listen to everybody and to try to come up with something that would satisfy, and maybe you can't satisfy everybody, but we tried to do some things that would help to mitigate everybody's concerns. So what we ended up doing was along the north side of the property, so the border between the north side of the property, and I believe there's 5 or 6 residential homes there, we did a 6-foot high masonry wall. That actually goes in between that garage on the north side. So there would be, going from west to east, you'd have a 6-foot high wall, and then when you reach the garage, that garage is going to be inset 3 feet. We'll have some sort of aluminum gate there, and that will provide that 3 feet to maintain the garages. Now, I personally would probably prefer to have that on the lot line, but again, there's some issues that came up with regards to building maintenance and things like that, so we set it off 3 feet, and that'll allow us to maintain that or change roofs or anything else if we ever do need to do that. To clarify, though, the finished height of that garage will be 11 feet in the back, and it slopes from back to front, 10 feet in the front, and that also ensures that there's not going to be any water spillover the water will be contained within the property and flow from back to front. And then going further east, that 6-foot-high wall continues again and turns the corner until you get to the other garage, and then you'll have another 3-foot offset, some green space back there. And then from the end of that garage to Big Beaver, that's gonna be all your landscaping. And that's gonna be evergreen materials, and that'll be well landscaped to make sure that we're not having headlights in neighbors' backyards and things like that. So, you know, the development, I'm proud of what we've designed so far, and looking forward to bringing this thing to reality. So, at the end of the day, the market's going to dictate a little bit of, you know, as to what our rents are and the mixture of tenants, and we're excited to see that. You know, still a little bit of concerns with what's going on in retail today. I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but that's maybe a tangent discussion about what's happening with bricks and mortar and retail and the Amazon effect and all that. So, having shifted this project from a more heavily centered on retail development, I think we are absolutely positioned much better than before to depend on having to lease out 25,000 square feet of retail, which I can tell you is difficult in today's environment just because of the shrinkage of categories and users. So the Kmarts of the world and these guys have, the business models just changed. So I know right now Amazon is building, you know, 1 million square feet in different industrial buildings to service all their customers. So I'm happy that we've shrunk this retail component down to a manageable size where we can get, you know, personal goods and services, things that, you know, maybe your pizza and, you know, salon and things like that, you know, small service restaurants, and those will add to the overall use and the development. So it's an exciting project, and I think we've come a long way, and I believe that we've addressed all the concerns, and I'd open it up to any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn? Yes.
Where you show there you're placing a wall section between, and those, that would be what the, just trying to think of direction, that would be what, the north end? Is that what?
The north is the top of the page.
Right, so it'd be the north. So are those evergreens going to be eliminated from the wall or not?
No, there's still going to be that landscaping,
Okay.
and that would be on our side of the wall right there, just to, I mean, we're putting up a brick wall. I didn't want to have that sort of enclosed prison effect type thing, so I think the landscaping is going to help to kind of break it up and probably actually hide the wall a little bit.
Sure,
So,
thanks. I like it.
thank you.
Mr. Teague?
Question for Mr. Sabana. I look at these drawings, and I look at the date on these drawings, and they're dated last year, 2016, October, November. And what I'm hearing is happening isn't reflected on the drawings. I don't see the carports or the garages move forward off the property line. I don't see a wall indicated where we just spoke about that there. And I guess the question I have is, shouldn't these drawings reflect what changes are being proposed?
This is, can you zoom in on that? Yeah, are you looking at A 0.1.1.1?
I was looking at the landscape plan. L1.0.
So go to, so I mentioned earlier, maybe I wasn't clear, the only thing that hasn't caught up to the site plan is the landscaping, based on the issue of the discussions that took place with the applicant related to the garages and the treatment of the buffer.
So what plan were you referencing?
This one on the screen is proposed site plan, A 0.1.1.
Zero.
It's the second sheet after, it's the first sheet after the cover sheet.
It's page 60.
Which page is it?
60. doesn't show the 3 foot behind it.
Here, the 3 foot's on the east side, on the west side, not the north side.
Not the north side, okay.
I think,
Well,
I think based on this
Oh, here's the
scale, the
north
scale of this drawing, you can actually see those garages offset down, and that distance right there between the property line and the garages seems to be 3 feet. There's that gap right there
Right.
between the masonry wall and the garages. Based on the scale, it probably is 3 feet.
No, its dimension is 3 feet.
It should be, these should be moved forward though.
And
They should be moved forward.
the bubbles, if you notice the bubbles here, the bubbles call out the changes.
So Brent, were maybe not on the elevation, the colored elevations, were those just not changed?
Yeah, that's
Site
correct.
plan was?
That's correct.
So the visual on the colored elevation, he didn't redraw the entire thing for that, but they did note the changes on the site plan.
The
So
landscape plan is not correct.
that's correct. The landscape plan is not correct. The landscape plan, they've not pulled the buildings 3 feet.
Is that the landscape plan, right?
This is the site plan, so this,
That
this,
doesn't show a 3 foot.
it actually does. It
Then
actually
why do
does.
the lines of each garage go all the way back to the property line?
There's actually,
If you enlarge that, it does.
there's actually a gap. It's hard to see.
Okay, good enough.
At that scale, 3 feet's difficult to pick up. But the bub, like I said, it was indicating the bubbles here, this gray kind of bubbly, this calls out the
Okay.
the
Yeah, I see
modification.
it now.
See that?
Yep.
And is the wall going to be on the property line, the screen wall?
I think
Yes, the wall is on the line.
property line, which is typical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it now.
And there- as Mr. Nager indicated, there'd be a gate to allow the maintenance crew access to cut the grass or fix the building. Not that we're foreseeing issues with the brick building, but over time,
Right.
things happen.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I'd like to address one more thing, because I think, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but the dumpsters were an issue, or something, not an issue, just some discussion to be talked about, yeah.
Well, at least you didn't call me garbage girl.
Well, we did look at doing something as far as pulling the doors forward, and, which I've done in the past, where you pull the doors forward, and that allows the doors to stay closed most of the time. We weren't able to do that, just because it started infringing on the driveways. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that in this case, and the only thing we can ensure is, new dumpsters, plastic lids, and a facade on the dumpster enclosure that's going to match the development. So we weren't able to pull those forward, though.
But can you put automatic closures on those gates? They are available now.
If it's a spring-loaded thing, then yeah, that's something that we can look into, certainly. As far as electronic gate or something, I can't.
No, I thought they were hinged
I can't
to
attest to
shut,
that.
like automatically.
Yeah, but it's a spring.
Mr. Mason?
Just a couple of questions. I think you mentioned the garage height is 12 feet,
11,
11 feet in the back, and the wall is 6 feet.
yeah.
I was curious how you landed on the 6-foot wall. And you said you got feedback where people ask for a higher wall.
Right. 6 foot high is, I guess, a typical wall, right, or a minimum height. And I don't know what the maximum would be allowed, but once you start getting into higher walls, then you probably need to support it differently, and it, maybe in jeopardy of falling over. But we thought 6 feet was adequate to prevent people from walking back and forth, providing that sort of barrier, and not being something where it was, overly obnoxious in height and sort of an eyesore. So something that, I don't know, a happy medium that's after a little while, you're probably gonna get some tree cover and things like that, but
Right.
we thought it was a good height.
And then one other question with the garbage. Did you look at compactor at all as part of your evaluation of this project?
No, we didn't, but yeah, we can look into that, certainly, if it makes more sense. I don't know with this amount of trash from residential, if it would warrant a compactor. If we did put a compactor, I would say it'd probably be more on the commercial side, on that dumpster, because I don't think the residential generates enough trash to make that economical. But it may be an option for the commercial part of it.
Okay.
So we'll look into that for the commercial piece. I'll look into it for the residential too, if it makes sense.
So your decision to actually put the masonry wall on the north side, is that because the majority of the residents on the north actually wanted a wall versus just landscaping?
Yeah, yeah.
And on the east side, they preferred to not have a wall? Is that kind of the feedback you got from them?
Yeah, I think that was the feedback, and I think that, you know, I still don't like the look of the whole wall going around there, but again, it's something, it's a compromise to make, you know, to make the development work. I don't see an issue with heavy landscaping to provide the buffer between the two, but the wall was something that everybody wanted, so that's what we're gonna do.
What are the size of the trees that you're planting on the east side, especially on the west side? You got commercial, but on the east side, what?
I know they're gonna be evergreen, I don't know, I don't have the particular size, I can get that information, or it should be listed on the plan. Jim, do you have that info? Do you have magnifying glass?
Were the neighbors made aware that those trees are not fully matured trees and that it'll take a while before you get that, that full mature landscape wall built in there without a masonry wall? And that they might get some headlights?
I don't think that we discussed that in particular, but
Okay.
I don't see that as being an issue for a long time. I think even when you do the evergreens, they stagger them, and obviously over time it gets better, but I don't think there's gonna be a problem to begin with. And if there is, then we can always address it and add more.
Mr. Evans?
That can be addressed. In fact, if it's not called out on the landscape plan, then the landscape plan is actually deficient. You need to, the landscape
No,
plan.
it's called out on there.
How high are they?
I could look it up, but
8 foot.
it's,
8 foot?
Are they good? I'm fine.
Yeah, I think that's pretty,
That's ball burlap.
pretty substantial, yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
And just so we know, Jim, I mean, how much has the landscape plan changed just with the addition of the wall and the garages being pulled forward? The landscape
Won't
plan is
change
not
the
much
shape.
different,
Won't
right?
change the amount of-
Just to clarify that for everyone, I don't think anything is changing, substantially changing on the landscape plan, just that the landscape plan is not reflecting what the site plan looks like, so that just has to catch up to it. But in terms of plants and materials and sizes and you know, everything is laid out there.
yeah, to clarify the landscape plan, they're gonna pull the garages 3 feet, they're gonna add the wall.
Right.
It's not, I wanted to point out it wasn't consistent, but it's not dramatically different.
Yes, Mr. Sanzica?
We have the garbage lady here, but I'm the stormwater guy.
Okay.
But I was just curious, you know, I know all your contention is underground. And do you normally have a plan for maintenance of facilities like that? Is it something that you normally have to report with the city, or?
I think that'd probably be a better question for my engineer.
I always like to have the engineer come up.
Jim Butler, PEA, 430 Rochester Court, Suite 100, Troy, Michigan, 48083. Mr. Sanzica, there's already a maintenance plan which Mr. Hager will go for as part of his development. He does take very good care of his projects. There's nothing formally with the city. They were required. Some municipalities, we have a schedule, an agreement we enter into. Here, we do not.
How often do you have to maintain those?
Typically, they should be maintained once a year.
They actually go in and clean them?
They should go and clean them once a year.
And you have the filtered facility?
Yeah, there's a bioretention in
Yeah.
the middle of that swale, in between the parking stalls in the middle. There's a bioretention swale.
Yeah. In the water quality unit.
And there's a water quality device.
And how often does that need to be maintained?
Should be once a year as well.
I imagine during construction.
Yeah, a few more times than once a year, but at the end of construction, once everything is
So
vegetated.
this has been pretty typical in developments throughout the city and throughout the area.
Yeah, we've done different varieties of this. The LA Fitness, we did do a bioswale. The Galleria project, we did do some different types of bioretention. There were some chamberized systems. It worked okay. It really, I think what we're proposing here is probably a better choice with the surface flow and then using a CDS or a swirl concentrator.
Yeah.
we've gotten the benefit of learning from the mistakes in the past, so our bioswale is going to be a little better than most.
It should be.
All right, thank you. Now you earned your fee for tonight.
You mean he's charging me for?
Nobody works for free.
He said he was in the neighborhood, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
For the applicant? Yes, Ms. Cruz.
Brent, could you put the one photo up that's just the individual building with the 3 flags in front?
That one?
That one. I graduated from a building that looks exactly like that. And I'm thinking it would look a whole lot less like an educational facility to me if you put some awnings, like some of the more contemporary style flat black awnings.
Mhm.
Just to give it a more welcoming feel. Now, that's obviously my personal taste showing. I don't know how you feel about that, and I don't know what everybody else's high school looked like, but that's mine.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly open to considering that. I am not, I'll just tell you on the record, I'm not a huge fan of the awnings because, you know, we own and manage quite a few properties, and they tend to, you know, get faded out, need lots of maintenance, get birds living up in there. And, you know, there's maybe some different ways that we could do it with the
What
metal
would you
type.
suggest?
I would suggest that we fill those brick face walls up there with tenant signage, and that'll make the building pop and look more like a retail shopping center than a school. So I think once you have the tenant signage up there and you know, some vibrancy in those windows, you're going to be looking at something much different. So.
And Mr. Savadon, who would control the consistency of the signing on the signage on the building?
They would have to meet the sign ordinance, so they would basically, they'd get 10% of the front, of the facade of the building would be the maximum size of the sign that they could get. Does that make sense?
Kinda. I guess I thought awnings because I just thought that it just looked so institutional.
Right. Well, if there's things that we can do, you know, between the time of the approval process and actually building, if there's administrative changes that we can make, I'd be happy to you know, consider or take a look at some of that stuff. If it's something that we have to decide on, you know, this minute, then I don't know if I can give you an answer right now.
Mr. Hudson.
If I can jump on Karen's suggestion, carry one step further. If you're considering signage, percentage you can't do anything about, could you make it sort of uniform instead of it looks like a bunch of alphabets jumbled on a floor put up against the window? I mean, some might be big, some might be small, different styles of fonts. My opinion, you're not bound by that, but a little more symmetry in the signage, I think, would make the building more attractive.
I would defer, I guess, to Brown on this one. I know that whatever signs are done there are going to have to meet whatever Troy's ordinances and whatever the rules and regulations are. And, you know, I guess I can't dictate to a tenant how to make their sign look. I can only.
understand.
I was
Just a
gonna say, most-
suggestion.
Most tenants have their own brand designs. So.
Some of the restrictions I've seen on signage, I think Bloomfield Hills has a pretty strict signage ordinance, and all their signs are black and gold. And I understand that that's what they want in the city and how that works. I actually don't think it's very good for, you know, it's not very good for retailers. It doesn't.
I agree with you.
You know, it
Black and
doesn't-
gold Bloomfield, I mean, that's their motto, and there's no exceptions.
Right.
But there's got to be
In
some
terms of
leeway in
the
inside
size
that
and everything
signage.
else.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's something I guess that we you know, as a developer and, you know, when we're, you know, drawing up leases and doing that sort of thing, you know, that's something that we might be able to have some input on, at least to make sure that one guy's not doing, you know, 40 square feet of signage and the other guy's doing 15,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Mr. Edmonds?
Connecting with that, I don't see a big need for 3 flagpoles. The high school I went to had 1 flagpole. And I would rather see only 1 flagpole and a more substantial public art piece than what we have there.
So, I see, oops, it's like I'm like a rookie on this thing. So I see an awning type structure here and here. I see public art here. I see a design element here. I see some plants that hopefully aren't going to be white like that, they're going to have color. There's going to be signage up here. This blue is going to go away, and there's going to be activity behind this glass. There's going to hopefully be people sitting here eating lunch, activity. There's going to be pedestrian movement in and out of this area here. Again, signage up here. I think take to heart the suggestion about the awnings, because I think elements like, I'm not an architect, but we've got an excellent architect right there. Elements like this, I think, add to it. I think this is a really good rendering. I don't know if necessarily if the color schemes do justice to what's going to go on here, because I think you don't want to add too much color to these ancillary elements, because you want the building to kind of pop in the. But I think by the time, I don't think the public art's going to necessarily be plain white thing that sticks up in the air. It's going to, you know, it's like, and I agree with the 3 flagpoles. I don't know if you need 3, but. I don't know.
I actually sort of agree with that too. I don't know what everyone else's take is, but
I think if you.
One larger, and then instead of having the, you know, state of Michigan and city of Troy, maybe we just do the one American flag, but if that's a change that we can make, yeah, I would probably do that as well.
I think I think the flags really give it an institutional look. When you look at it, it's like, whoa, you feel like standing up and putting your hand over your heart when you look at this. So, you know, consider awnings if you think it needs to splash it up. But I think when this comes to fruition with all of the things going on, I think it's going to pop.
Yeah, I agree.
What is the distance between the 2 buildings? It looks really narrow from here.
I got to look on that, but I wanted it to be at least 20 feet.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, that's good.
yeah, it had to be something substantial and not look
Right.
like a bowling
You
alley.
don't want a narrow
Yeah.
corridor. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Prince?
I agree with the minimizing the American flag, not that I'm not patriotic, but this is just a little overkill, but
Yeah.
giving some context to it, because so many cities restricted the size of signs, the American flag became the sign. So how do you find your building? Like you see somebody going, especially in Southfield, on Telegraph Road, they'll put up a giant American flag, basically so you can find that auto dealer, because their sign restrictions were such that they couldn't really put a big sign out there anymore. As far as the awnings, yeah, there are some other retail that we have up and down Big Beaver. If you go up and down Big Beaver, I'm just trying to think, what's the, starts with a C?
Chris Belli's.
Not Chris Belli's, but the one near Crooks. Oh, well. Point is, no, that's okay. The point is, there are quite a few retail that have used some kind of fabric. I even think TGI Fridays use some kind of red pieces of fabric to offset their bill, just to add a little more warmth to the outside, just to get away from that harsh, solid. It's just a thought. I appreciate what Ms. Cruz offered, and I think it may soften the look. The other thing about the signs, Don Edmonds talked about some kind of consistency. I realize every brand, I'm not saying we're going to have black and gold, but you know, there's all types of styles of signs. In other words, there's an outline exposed neon or exposed LED. There's backlit all. There's channel letters, the typical channel letters, which face the interior lit, lights up a plastic face.
Right.
But if you can find a more elegant solution, there's a lot of great solutions with LEDs from rear lighting now, backlighting, that may create, even though they're all different shapes and types, fonts and sizes, that the style of, in other words, I wouldn't want to see a backlit sign, a face lit sign, and a
Right,
internally lit sign. If that could be consistent, I think that's about the best we could do within our ordinance.
Yes, Mr.
Two quick
Butler.
things. One, the distance between the two buildings is 19 feet.
Yeah, I was actually.
And secondly, this element here, Brian, is this only here, or would this be carried over each
I
entrance?
think
or
he just had that on the corner.
On the corner, okay.
That's metal, isn't it? It's a metal.
Yeah.
It's a metal.
Yeah, it's a metal structure, but it's,
There's one over here too.
And that wouldn't wear out like fabric might.
well, that's similar to the other property that we have on Big Beaver, closer to Livernois, Kilmer Plaza. So it has that shade type awning above, but it doesn't actually carry the water on top, which is good. So it provides that look, but you don't have to worry about the water and snow collecting up on that.
Okay.
Mr. Sabana, on L1.1, there's an example of a sculpture, an art sculpture. And when this is submitted to us, do we take this as an example that it may not be this, or is this what we're going to get? I mean, I'm just trying to understand, when the documents are submitted, am I going to see that type of furniture out there, or bicycle rack, or this particular piece of art, or is it just an example? It's a vertical piece of art.
I read this, being involved in enforcement and administration, I read this as an example of generally how it, kind of conceptually how it's going to look. Now, does it have to be exactly like this dimension, this material, this size gap between? No.
You use the word dimension, and I guess if the word is concept we're after, I would think dimension is a critical aspect of, if it's not going to be a vertical dimension of about 8 feet, I think, or 90, yeah, about 8 feet high, what do we take as concept then? Maybe the material changes, but I would think the shape of this is a vertical shaft-like or something of about 8 feet high. And I'm just trying to understand. I'm not either saying this is good or bad art. It's art.
Given how this is used in this context, that is with other examples, they're not cut sheets, they're photographs, and my take is that they're really intended to show more of a flavor of the design styles that are posed. Again, I would look at it as a guideline. It would be approximately 95 inches in height and would be vertical in shape and be consistent with that, but not necessarily mimic that.
And where does it come into, at what point, who looks at it and says you've met the requirements that you've got approval for the planning commission? Where in the process of, because this is probably one of the last elements that gets installed, who enforces this, I guess is the question.
We work together with the building department and the applicant. The applicant typically is really excited and says, you gotta come out and, if they show us a sketch and says, what do you think of this? We review it, we give it the thumbs up, and then we go and inspect it when it's completed.
So it's really the planning department that does
Yes.
this, because this is outside the purview of building codes.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. This is not a public hearing, but if there is anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this item on the agenda, you may go up to the mic and sign in, and mic is yours. There's no one? Okay, we'll bring it back to the table. I think we're ready for resolution on this item.
So reminder, this is a PUD that the applicant seeks concept development plan approval and preliminary plan approval. The planning commission is a recommending body. This would have to go to city council for ultimate approval to essentially revise the PUD agreement to allow this.
Yes.
On that, published resolution, there is a whereas section here. One, two, three, fourth one, I got, no, third one down, says a 3,500 square foot restaurant with drive-through. That's in our resolution printed right now. I think that should be struck out. We should not have the drive-through in there.
Mhm.
What page?
This is the resolution.
Page 7.
And it-
Well, it actually, it says, whereas the subject property is currently zoned PUD8 and is controlled by a concept development plan, which was approved on October 1st, 2007, and includes 2 retail buildings, a 3,500 square foot restaurant with drive-through, and 23 townhomes. So what that's doing is it's calling out what's approved today, but this is gonna be
Oh.
rescinded
Okay.
and
Do
revised.
we have another resolution printed to read?
So
That's what it is
Just
currently.
referencing
that's what it's
all.
currently, and it's gonna be,
There's been no action since then.
it's gonna be revised to reflect that it's now 4 3-story apartment buildings, 2 retail restaurant facilities, 770 square foot community center. It's possible the wording needs to be improved, but the intent is to
Change it from what
change it from what it was
Okay, what
to
we're
what
approving today.
they propose.
All right.
And if that needs to be clarified, certainly we can clarify it.
Maybe if just the word "and includes" is changed to "and included," so it's past tense.
If you want to add another whereas the development plan, which was approved on October 1st, 2007, will be revised. You're good at wordsmithing, Tom. Go for
I'm
it.
not gonna do this one. I'm gonna let somebody else flap their lips on it.
I think it's sufficient as
I
it's
think it's all
proposed.
right, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, Mike.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead. Last one to speak.
All right. Whereas the applicant, Danger Company, submitted an application for a planned unit development located at the north side of Big Beaver, east of John R., in section 24, approximately 4.77 acres in area. Whereas a mixed-use development including 4 3-story apartment buildings, 2 restaurant/restaurant facilities, and a 780 square foot community center is proposed for the approximately 4.77 acre site, and whereas the subject property is currently zoned PUD8 and is controlled by a concept development plan, which was approved in October 1, 2007, and includes 2 retail buildings, a 3,500 square foot restaurant and drive-through, and 23 townhouses, and whereas the proposed revision to the PUD meets the standards for approval set forth in section 11.03, be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommends to City Council that concept development plan approval and preliminary development plan approval for the proposed Troy Crossings planned unit development be granted, subject to the following: 1, submit a revised landscape plan indicating plantings, if any, in the 3-foot space between the rear of garages and property lines and in the space between the wall and the parking lot with the final site plan submittal. 2, provide landscape/open space calculation on the site plan. 3, indicate dumpster specifications relating to the door enclosures, side entrances, and plastic lids, period.
So
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Edmonds. Mr. Sullivan.
Could I suggest, Mr. Hudson, that the first condition simply state, submit a revised landscape plan consistent with the proposed site plan?
Yes, I
that's fine.
would substitute that.
Okay. Seconded by Mr. Edmonds. Roll call, Ms. Zarnicki, please.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krantz?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Abdiadian?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz? Yes. Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can we take a 5-minute break?
Who gets this
We will
first?
take a 5-minute break.
Thank you again for inviting us back. It's been about 3 years since we've done this, and actually, Ms. Dufresne and I are going to kind of tag team a little bit. She's going to start with the first part of it, and I probably will interject because I just can't help myself. I think the one thing, it's great that it's in a very casual setting, so again, that invites you to ask. We invite you to ask any questions that you have as you're having the question. So don't feel like you have to wait till the very end. I'm hoping that you will ask us the questions as they arise, because that way you'll remember them and we can address them right there and then. So, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Dufresne to start.
So Brent has challenged me to do this in less than 7 minutes. I'm sorry it's not going to happen. But like Lori said, we really kind of envision this to be interactive. I know that a lot of times we sit around this table and we have questions, and I sometimes deer in the headlights look comes over my face, because I want to tell you the right answer, but I also need to do it knowing that there's a crowd of people, there's people watching, the developer, so this gives us an opportunity to sort of interact and have some of that back and forth that we don't always have the opportunity to have when we're under the pressure of knowing we're going to have to make a decision. So most of what I'm going to discuss, you've all been exposed to before, so I don't want to dwell on a lot of these topics, but I think it's important, because like Lori said, our office hasn't done this in over 3 years, so I think it's important just to reiterate some of these things. So just for tonight, just go over a little bit planning and development, what I'm calling Planning and Development 101. I'm going to talk about the tools that you have at your resources as planning commissioners, and Lori's actually going to talk about Ethics, Open Meetings Act, and Freedom of Information Act. So, as our chairman reads in the beginning of each meeting, what we do in this room is governed by state law, and there's actually two laws that govern what we do, and that's the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. And Brent again said, "You're not going to sit up here there and read MCL 125." Well, I am, just I am, because that's what I get paid to do. And I don't want to dwell on it, but I think it's important for you to recognize and understand that what you do in this room is governed at first by the state statute. None of us would be able to do what we do in this room if we didn't have the Enabling Act that allows us. So there's the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, again, MCL 125.3101 at sequence. And what the Zoning Enabling Act, it regulates the use of land and structures to meet the needs of citizens for food, fiber, energy, and other natural resources, places of residences, recreation, industry, trade, service, and other uses. That language is lifted right out of the Enabling Act, the Zoning Enabling Act, and you'll see that reflected in all of our zoning ordinances. The Zoning Enabling Act, it ensures that land is used appropriately. It's one of its purposes is ensure there's to limit overcrowding within cities. And again, Lori's going to talk about this, but the overarching purpose is to promote health, safety, and welfare. The other state statute that governs what we do in this room is the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, and that's MCL 125.3801 at sequence. And these two state laws, they work in conjunction with each other. And out of the box, what the Planning Enabling Act does is it really specifies the master plan, what goes into a master plan, the approval process, and it establishes the authority for that. What the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act does, within the Zoning Enabling Act, every single thing that is in our zoning ordinance is governed in the Zoning Enabling Act, from adopting and amending the zoning ordinance to creating zoning districts, rezoning, including conditional rezoning, which we'll talk about at length in a little bit. But that's why I'm not going to read every single one of the statutes, but I wanted to call out that each thing in our zoning ordinance, it's authorized and stems from the state statute. So each one of our zoning ordinances relates back to an MCL citation. The Michigan Planning Enabling Act, as I said, the purpose, and I had actually never read this before, and I think it's worth a minute that it's going to take me to read it. But out of the box at MCL 125.3807, it really tells you what the purpose of the master plan is, and is to guide and accomplish development that satisfies all of the following criteria. It needs to be coordinated, adjusted, harmonious, efficient, and economical. You must consider the character of the planning jurisdiction and its suitability for particular uses, judged in terms of such factors as trends in land and population development. Again, and I'd never actually read this before either, it will, in accordance with present and future needs, promote public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, and general welfare. So that sort of expounds, we think in terms of public health, safety, and welfare, but it's a little more than that.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. And it's 125.3807. And it will, and master plan will, in accordance with present and future needs, best promote public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, and general welfare.
Can we have a copy of that?
I think what Lori and I thought we would do is send a link with the presentation, and we can also, at the end, I can provide a link to the MCL for both the Enabling Act and the the Zoning Enabling Act and the Planning Enabling Act. Is that okay, Lori? Or?
Yeah, we're going to give it to you electronically so that you can have it and you can access that. We could probably also have it.
We can make copies for next meeting.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
Whatever.
And a quick question.
Sure.
Does it anywhere in our either charter or ordinance specify what the morals are?
Yes, I was wondering.
No.
No. It's discretionary. Again, you have to be able to articulate how you are supporting that and how it goes towards that, how it satisfies that criteria. So again, we do have that law, but we also have other constitutional laws as well. So it's not a blank sheet. But you do have a lot of discretion and you do have a lot of responsibility. I think as Julie has read, I mean the master plan, that's the document that governs the city, and that's why you revisit it every 5 years. And so hopefully you're taking all of those things into consideration when you're doing the master plan in the next 4 years or so.
Right, and I know that we just finished that process last, I think it was August of 2016. So that whole process took a year, and again, the Michigan Planning Enabling Act requires, as Lori just said, every 5 years your master plan is revisited, revised, amended if necessary.
So, just a question.
Sure, no.
So, it sounds like then, well, this is my question. Is there a situation where there's the master plan as it relates to some specific project, development, etc., doesn't meet all those criteria you just said?
Well, let's maybe I
Or
should.
is it supposed to,
So
are
the
they
master
supposed to
plan-
overlap?
The master plan is a guide. The master plan is supposed to dictate future land use. And I love when Mr. Krent always reminds us that the master plan is a guide, the zoning ordinance is the law, and we're bound by the laws. And, I think we saw with respect to the process of McClure going through that, and I don't want to just, because we're in litigation, I don't want to dwell on that topic, but I think we saw the interplay between the master plan and the zoning ordinance, and how they're supposed to work together, but what governs is the zoning ordinance. And if you find that your zoning ordinance, say you start going down a direction that's not in the same direction as your master plan, then what the Planning Enabling Act says then is that you need to go back and revisit your master plan on that issue. If you're veering away from your future land use based on what some of your decisions are based on your zoning ordinance, you need to go back and revise your master plan.
Okay.
I just have a common question. I think a lot of projects a majority of projects that have come before us, I think a lot of the discussion that we have on health, safety, and welfare are just on those 3 words, really. And we really never delved into the other words you mentioned,
I had never read
the-
those before.
MCL is, I guess it's a legal document.
It's a statute.
But it has interjected in there a word that is a very philosophical, I guess, if we go, if just that word alone, moral. So if we, in future projects, we can go down the road of absolute morality versus relative morality, and bring that into the discussion from a legal perspective. That is always going to create, it's always going to polarize the room. So how do we deal with that topic in itself in the legal realm and framework of approving a project and applying morality to a project?
I'm going to interject
Sure.
here, just, again, this is a master plan, so
Right.
the words morality are as, in regards to the master plan, not the zoning, okay? So you don't have the words morality in the rezoning context. And I think what it's designed to do, some communities, their adult use ordinances are in the they plan for that and where they want them to be. So I think that that's really what it's getting at, are those types of uses that, again, adult uses are the first example that I can think of. But again, it's master plan uses those words, and master plan, it's very broad and encompassing. Zoning, you're a little more limited on what you can consider. But again, health, safety, and general welfare, that we always try and encourage, there are restrictions on that, but there is some discretion as well.
No, and that's what Lori, and I guess I want to make sure that I'm stating that right. The zoning ordinance is different than the master plan.
Right.
And when you draft your master plan, I don't know, I spend a lot of time actually, because of the McClure lawsuit, looking at the master plan. It's a very detailed document, and it goes through like community standards, and it goes through how you want the community to look, the character. So I think the master plan, like Lori's saying, you may consider, do you want adult bookstores? Do you want, things like that? You can consider that, but ultimately, when you're zoning, that it takes that out of the equation.
Right, I see your point there, and again, if we just go to the master plan, I guess the master plan the intent is to paint a bigger picture of
How
what
you want
the
your
vision of
community
the
to look
city
and
is.
feel.
Right, and then the zoning ordinance doesn't specifically have that verbiage in it the same way. But again, we've dealt with these projects in the past where we struggled in dialogue of trying to interpret what is a vision of the master plan and then apply it to that specific project. Is a vision what we're actually seeing before us, or what the developer is actually saying will happen or should happen in the future, or are we looking only at what's happening today? So I think, we are looking at that too, but sorry, just.
So if we had a project come before us for a warehouse structure for medical marijuana, and it was a variance-free project, we would be approving it?
Well, if it's a facility, not at this point in time, because they have not opted in to facilities, so.
Who's they haven't opted in?
City council,
City council has not opted in to do facilities.
correct.
What about any facilities that are existing prior to the change in the medical marijuana statute?
They're not facilities, they are grow operations instead. So there's, the facilities are the commercial, the grow operations are what we have now, the caregiver operations.
So those exist because it's legal, and then anything that would come before us under the new Michigan law would not be allowed because we haven't opted in.
At this point, they have not, city council has not
There'd be
opted
nothing to
in.
bring before this body because the
Okay.
council hasn't opted in at this point.
Okay.
All right. So, I don't know, again, I don't know if anyone's ever taken a hard look at our master plan, but it's interesting when you compare our master plan to the zoning ordinance. I have a slide. They're similar, yet they're different, and it really, again, it drives home the point that the master plan is for future land use. It's how you want the city to look, and the zoning map is how it looks today. And it's a zoning ordinance can be a master plan if it's an effective master plan. It's an educational tool that you can use for developers, for citizens, and for other communities that border on the city, so that you can sort of plan together and see what other communities are doing. And the master plan an effective master plan can serve as a basis for your zoning decisions. I wanted to just speak for a minute about the difference between future land use and your zoning map, and how they're not the different neighborhood nodes. I know neighborhood nodes is an issue that comes up, that we end up speaking about frequently. And again, the neighborhood node is something that's in the master plan, and I pulled this language on page 70 and 71 of their master plan. And I don't know if you can see them, the circles. I don't know if it's easier to see on this diagram or the diagram on the left, but the circles that represent the neighborhood nodes are meant to demonstrate a rough surface area. They are not precise. By design, they're not precise. They're not meant to establish a formal land use category or policy in and of themselves, but rather to validate the planned uses. And I know when the easy storage issue came up, I think it was you, Mr. Hudson, I'm not picking on you, but I think you were concerned.
Okay, you got a thick skin.
You were concerned about, okay, well, if we look at the master plan and we look at the zoning ordinance, we're expanding the part of it, and it's not going to be, your point was, I think, they were equal. If you looked at the four corners at Livernois and Long Lake, they were equal. And then what we were trying to do with, may have done with easy storage is sort of expand that, and you were concerned about that. And whether we reached the right result or not, my point on this is the neighborhood nodes are not necessarily meant to be precisely followed. They're
No,
guides.
they can be jagged if they've got the same basic uses of that node and that storage facility. I know
Right, and that's
we're
why,
arguing over how many dead horses we got at the table, but that was not part of it, in my opinion.
That's one of the reasons that we don't, if you go back to the two maps, the policy document, we do not have property lines. We have streets but property
Right.
lines. Streets but not property lines. Zoning, we have to be precise, has to have property lines. So we purposely keep this more general, the policy document.
right, like I said, when we put them up there right next to each other, I think it really
Points out the difference.
it points out future land use and what is permitted under ordinance. And again, the tools that you have available to you, some are regulatory, meaning they're laws. I mean, the zoning ordinance, obviously the building code, the sign ordinance, and the fire code, and some are advisory. Some of the tools you have at your disposal are advisory. The master plan, which talks about the special area plans. They're called out specifically the Rochester Road, the Maple Road, North Troy, the Big Beaver pedestrian plan, and then also the Big Beaver corridor study. I was not involved in that, and there's a lot of good information in there as well. But again, that's advisory. It does not have the force of law. Did I see a hand, Ms. Cruz?
No, I just was relaxing.
All right. So again, just delving into a little bit of the zoning ordinance. I know you're all very well versed in the zoning ordinance and what it does. It regulates location, density, and intensity of use of land. It regulates size, height, and setback of buildings. And what I want to do is focus on some of the articles in the zoning ordinance that we see repeatedly. Article 9, which is the special land use, the planned unit development, which is Article 11, which we discussed tonight, which was fortuitous because I hadn't had one before, I don't think, with this body. Amendments, which is where rezonings, both rezoning and conditional rezoning fall, is under Article 16, and then just briefly touch on site plan review, which is Article 8. So special land use, it's found in Article 9. I thought it was, again, this was something I had not read before. I had not read the intent. And what I found interesting is the language in the second paragraph that talks about these provisions are designed to allow practical latitude for the applicant and at the same time maintain adequate provision for the protection of the health, safety, and convenience and general welfare of the community. And I thought that was, we're back to that health, safety, and welfare issue that I know this body concerns itself with. And so each, not only does the zoning ordinance itself have an overriding concern of public health, safety, and welfare, but some of these articles, again, call out the importance of considering health, safety, and welfare.
I have a question. Can
You threw your
elaborate-
voice, sorry, I thought it came from over there.
Can you elaborate a little bit of what it means, what practical latitude means?
Flexibility.
Flexibility, okay.
Yeah,
So
but
allowing the applicant flexibility, so it's that balance between the flexibility of the applicant and the protection of health and safety of the, so there's still a lot of discretion there.
yeah, special land use and there's, yes, and we'll get to that in a second. Lori, did you want to?
Well, yeah, just, the special land uses are the ones that you normally wouldn't do it because those are the ones that are likely to impact the neighboring properties. Those are the ones that are likely to, to the car washes, for example, or something where it's likely to generate noise, special uses, right, yeah. So that's why before you approve those, you wouldn't just want to approve those, knowing that there is probably a potential impact to the neighboring properties. So you want to make them demonstrate to you how they are mitigating that potential negative effect of their neighboring property owners, So that's what it gives them the opportunity to do, is to show you, hey, this is different than what you expect. We are considerate of the neighbors and you should give us this special use.
Drive-throughs.
Well, in that bubble, though, I think you're going to find conditional rezoning is sort of a trump card for any kind of zoning. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we're
but-
getting ahead of
Yeah, we're getting there, we're not,
We'll
it's
talk
not
about
a tool that we enjoy particularly either. That's something that
But special
we'll get
land use,
there.
again, and I know we like this word discretion, because not everything that this body does allows for a lot of discretion, but special land use, because you do have, it's outlined in the ordinance, in section 904, you have 7 standards of review, and I sort of compacted them just for the slide's sake. And that's why I meant to say this at the beginning. That's the problem with legal presentations, like, they all end up with just words on the page. Like, you sit through some of the city council presentations, and they're all, fancy, and they have like the, fancy, there's nothing really all that interesting I can put up there. So I apologize for the verbiage, but that's what we deal in as lawyers. We deal in words. So your 7 standards of review, and I've sort of, again, compacted them. Compatibility with adjacent uses and the master plan. You consider the impact on traffic, consider the impact on public services and the environment, and you consider, if it's in compliance with the zoning ordinance. In addition, there's all the factors that you're going to review for special land use, circulation, and we go through this all when we have these reviews, for circulation and parking, hours of operation of any businesses, nuisances, again, because these land uses are going to impact the neighboring adjacent lands. Nuisances, noise, smoke, fumes, odor, what is the activity that's going on this land? Again, is it a car wash, is it a kennel, will there be barking dogs, is it going to be, the peacock place with all of the chickens and things. What sort of outdoor activity? Is there going to be storage area, then we work areas? What's interesting about the special land use, unlike a PUD or unlike a conditional rezoning, special land uses don't get reviewed by city council. So that's something that's, you have the discretion, you review all of the standards, you review the factors, and you're the final say in special land uses. And I know we recently passed added hotels that'll fall under special uses, and I don't think we've had one yet.
Not since the
Right, not
change.
since- Right, not since the change. So tonight, I don't want to dwell on planned unit developments because we did discuss those today. But planned unit development is Article 11 of the zoning ordinance. Again, it's MCL, the authorizing statute is MCL 125.3503. And planned unit development sort of grew out of a way to incentivize redevelopment. It grew out of a way to replace obsolete uses and structures. Now, that's not really what was going on with the plan that was before us tonight, because that's vacant area. But my research indicated that planned unit developments, when they first came into fashion, they were really more for redevelopment. But what a planned unit development is supposed to do is supposed to encourage mixed use. And I want to stress that a planned unit development is not intended to be a way to avoid the zoning ordinance. It allows flexibility, but it shouldn't replace, it shouldn't be used instead of the zoning ordinance. Again, there in section 11.03 of the planned unit development article, there are 18 standards. And what I thought, we didn't get into much discussion tonight about the standards, but what I found interesting when I reviewed the standards is a lot of them deal with creativity and innovation, and the word dynamic was used there. So it really, again, it affords this body an opportunity. And I think Brenda and I briefly discussed this through the course of the review of the Troy Crossing PUD. You know, that project evolved since from the first time it came before us. But I think you know, you do have the discretion to encourage a developer who's coming before you with the PUD to be innovative, to be creative, and again, you know, do something different.
The memo for the public hearing addressed all the standards.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying it didn't. Right, no, it did, absolutely.
And the other thing too is that it does allow for a cohesive plan. So if it's a mixed use, but it allows for benches, for example, throughout that you know, are similar, similar materials and things like that. It allows for a coordinated plan for the different mixed uses, and hopefully it's a cohesive development as well. And we do have a few of them in the city. We've done a few PUDs. And that's certainly the goal. Certainly is our preference to have one developer.
Right.
And certainly we like to see, you have, you always want to have the McDonald's up first, and then you do everything else. Well, everything else never gets done. So that's why we really do like to have, the phasing of it. We like to have all of it done, the infrastructure done as well.
As Lori said, there are a few examples in the city where, the commercial part was done by one developer, and then the rest, the residential part was sold off and done later. It really is, the PUD, it really works better if you have a master developer, a person who does all of it, all of the phasing. But economy obviously is going to dictate whether or not that's feasible. As you know, as we discussed a little bit tonight, City Council does have the final authority to approve.
Question.
Yes.
On the PUDs, I used to say, I don't see it here, but I used to say, and provide a public benefit. Is that gone now? Out of the PUD? Because, when the Monarch went up, the public benefit was a park.
Right.
And the public benefit for the Midtown Square was the transit center. And this last PUD, I didn't see much public benefit.
It's not gone. I may not have stressed it as much as it may have been stressed in the past. It's public benefit is still one of the, it's still one part of one of the 18 standards to review. I just didn't call out all of the 18 standards because, like I said, I knew that we were discussing that today. But no, public benefit is not gone.
Okay.
That's good.
I think in the past, though, for some PUDs, administration put a heavy weight on the public benefit concept. I think I didn't necessarily agree with it. I think it's one standard, it's not the standard. So I don't think we've varied from the standards in the ordinance, but I think just the way it was applied for some projects, I thought was a little heavy-handed.
And unlike in some of the standards for approval that you find throughout the different articles in the zoning ordinance, some of them will say you must find all of the following factors. In the planned unit development, what it says is you must find a sufficient number of the 18. And so again, you don't have to find all 18 of the factors being present, but you have to find a sufficient number. That begs the question, what's sufficient? More than half? Is it, 17? That leaves a little bit of discretion. Okay, so now our favorite topic, or my favorite topic, is rezoning. So there's two different kinds of rezoning. That's not really the right legal way to describe it, but there's a straight rezoning, which is under section 16.03 of our zoning ordinance, and a rezoning must be consistent with the master plan. And again, let me just back up. So a rezoning is a simple rezoning is where the developer comes to the city and says, I want this parcel rezoned. And they don't come with a site plan. In fact, if we had a straight rezoning, it would not come with a site plan, because you would not be able to consider that site plan. You would just, you would consider as I put up here, the worst case scenario. You'd presume that whatever is going to be built on there is what the worst case scenario of what could be built under, what the worst case scenario permitted use is under the zoning ordinance. The decision whether or not to rezone, again, can't be arbitrary and capricious, another term that you hear us lawyers use around this table pretty frequently, and you must be able to justify your decision. The difference with the conditional rezoning at 1604 is, and that'll stop, don't worry. But I wanted to call out, this is something that is permitted, it's permitted by the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. It's sort of, again, my research, what bore out of my research was a lot of developers and municipalities were sort of abusing the rezoning, abuse is a strong word, but they were putting conditions on rezoning that weren't permitted. So the MCL 125.3405, which created this permissive conditional rezoning, sort of allowed municipalities to do what they were doing anyways. But I need to stress, and I know we've gone through this a couple times, but the conditions need to be initiated by an applicant. They need to be voluntary and in writing. And the city shall not add to or alter any of the conditions, and the city shall not require applicant to offer conditions as a requirement for zoning. And I know when I sound like I say that often, and I can't stress it enough, but what it comes from is the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. MCL 125.3405, I've highlighted in red what I'm trying to stress, and that the local government shall not add to or alter the conditions approved under subsection 1, again, the voluntary conditions in writing, and the local unit in number 5, the local unit of government shall not require a landowner to offer conditions as a requirement for rezoning. So
I don't know how Brent feels about this. I know that this is not our favorite at all because you really, you have to just take it as they propose it. And so the proper response, if you don't like it with the conditions that they have offered, the proper response is, we're sorry, we are not going to recommend approval as is. I mean, that's what you communicate. You don't, it's not, we don't want to hear from the table of the Planning Commission, well, would you consider doing this? Or you need to say, I can't recommend this proposal because of X. If they, at the podium, say, well, we would happily add that, then we're going to need to get that in writing later on. You can consider it, but it has to come from them. It has to originate from them. You can't suggest it to them. You can't make it conditional. you need to either say, yes, we'll take it, or no, we won't. Those are your two decisions.
A planned unit development is a negotiated process.
Yes.
A conditional rezoning is not
Right.
a negotiated process.
Yes. This is a lot faster than the planned unit development. I prefer the planned unit development process because this really does have a lot of those issues. And they're going to always come back and say, well, we felt pressured to offer those conditions. And that's why I don't like conditional rezoning. I understand it's a lot faster. I get that. But anyways, we prefer the planned unit.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but it does always makes me nervous when we engage in the discussion around the table, and then the applicant goes out in the hallway or whatever, and then discusses amongst himself with his or her team, are they gonna come back? And that takes the voluntariness out of it. And, the other part of what we do in our office is, criminal prosecutions, and, is your confession voluntary? We deal in voluntariness. And like I said, that it's different because we're not holding, no one's gonna go to jail if we don't like their conditions, but in terms of lawsuits and what we're dealing with in McClure, it really needs to be, you can't feel coerced. And that I think we sort of muddy the waters a little bit in some of our discussions.
And I know I'm going to get to the questions, but I think what we need to have is we need the developers to come up with these proposals ahead of time. We need them to be more creative. What they've been doing is kind of what I would just consider a little bit lazy. They come with the site plan, and that's the only condition that they really offer is just the site plan. We need them to be creative, and it's not on, the burden is not on our planning staff to come up with and to suggest, because they can't do it. They can't suggest it. Because if they do, then they're going to say, you coerced us to come up with this. And again, it puts us in a little bit of a precarious position if, in fact, it is ultimately not offered or not approved by City Council. So I know that there were some questions, so we can get to the questions maybe. John?
You said
Mr. Tate?
we could say to them that we do not accept your offer. Is that where it stops, or we could say we don't accept your offer because?
I think,
Because that's
yeah.
kind of a backdoor saying, I don't like this, so if you change this, I may like it.
It's a fine line, of course. I think absolutely you can articulate the reasons why, and in fact, I think we encourage you to articulate the reasons why you don't like it. But then it stops there. It's not, but if you had a two-story, then we would, you can't, that's that next step that we definitely don't want you to take. So I think it's appropriate to say, I can't recommend this because you have a 5-story building here and it just doesn't fit. Ms. Cruz?
Why can't you just eliminate conditional rezoning and make everything a PUD?
Yeah. Well, it is something.
Well, that's an excellent question, Ms. Cruz. Because when I was doing my research, I was thinking to myself, why did we put this in our ordinance? But now we have. We
Can't change it.
We can.
We can. But yeah, we took the initiative. Once the statute gave us the permission or the authorization to do conditional rezoning, it's in our ordinance.
I move we strike it and just go with PUD.
I think there are, I'm going to backtrack now. I think there are legitimate reasons and legitimate projects for conditional rezoning. And I think sometimes developers use a conditional rezoning because, like Lori said, it's an easier and faster process. But
This body would be the ones to
And so-
initiate.
If it's better for us to do a PUD because it gives us the opportunity to have, all this discretion and discussion, why are we not doing, call me selfish, why are we not doing what's best for us as a city and a body representing the residents that live here? And I don't really care if it's easier on a developer to go the conditional route.
The process, if that is something that you were considering, it would have to go to City Council ultimately, and ordinance revision would have to go to council ultimately. And I don't know how they feel about conditional rezonings. I can't predict how they feel about. But certainly you have, as a body, have the ability to recommend changes to the zoning ordinance to City Council for their consideration.
But don't some parcels not lend themselves to a PUD, which includes mixed zoning or mixed uses? There are some parcels that wouldn't lend themselves to that. Or even developers, probably you wouldn't get as many applications if you didn't have conditional rezoning.
Trying to think. I need an example.
I know that conditional rezoning, and this is townships, of course, and, you know, of course, it's a little different than cities, but sometimes they use them, conditional rezonings, for temporary uses. And so, we don't. I mean, ours are not really temporary uses. Ours run with the land. That may be something that is a tool that you may want to explore and you know, again, encouraging the PUDs, but maybe you want to tweak conditional rezonings. That's something for further discussion, I think.
I guess
Well,
we've had, yeah, go ahead.
McClure Street was a conditional rezoning too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
It's a single use. They weren't providing mixed uses there. So would a PUD work there?
Conditional rezoning didn't.
No. Well, I'm not so sure a PUD would either.
I don't think it's our task tonight to decide whether we want to keep
Yeah, that's a later discussion.
I think it's an interesting concept. It's a tool in our toolbox that hasn't been very effective lately, but it does afford the opportunity for a rezoning application that otherwise makes sense, but you want to eliminate the unknown. You had a slide up there that said worst case scenario. You know, it's in some communities it's morphed into like a PUD light, which is really not the intent of a conditional rezoning. I want to chew on that that's an interesting concept. We're not obligated to permit conditional rezoning. We can if we choose. We don't necessarily have to.
But is Mr. Edmonds right? I mean, is PUD only for mixed use?
The threshold, the standards for PUD are higher, so he's correct insofar as it's a single-purpose use. I don't know whether what was ultimately submitted would meet the standards for a PUD at that location, but we were looking at it in hindsight. Had we known up front that it was a PUD, we could have negotiated some elements that had it meet the standards. It's difficult to. I'd have to look at it. But it's for relatively simple applications like a 1 acre lot, where all you want to do is extend the current zoning over one lot. PUD, there's a lot of work involved, and it can be like hitting a nail with a sledgehammer. It's like, but.
Now, the other point with a conditional rezoning that has some merit is you've got a, as Brent's pointed out, you've got a rezoning or a zoning area, and applicant wants it rezoned for a building or whatever. But the only problem with granting a rezoning is you're looking at the worst case scenario. And once you do that rezoning, that guy looking for the rezoning changes his mind and goes to a lower category, and it's just an eyesore in the area. So, you know, conditional rezoning has got its place if used properly.
Yeah, it does. So I'm sorry to take over the conversation, but for example, let's say it's a drive-through, and there's a rezoning, and the neighbors have no issue with anything except they just don't want the hours of operation to go past 11 o'clock. No other issues. That's an example where a conditional rezoning could work, because let's say the applicant meets with the neighbors before they even submit any application. The neighbors say, you know, no opposition, but just if you could just close between 11 and 7, that'd be great.
That
Yep.
never happens.
Well, of course not, but I didn't say it was a good example, it's just an example.
But it could.
But in that instance, it's not a PUD light. All they're doing is offering one condition, and that condition is hours of operation. That's a simple conditional rezoning. What this is morphed into is everything is kind of considered and not negotiated, but discussed and back and forth, and it's become more sometimes than it was really intended to become.
And again, this is a discussion for
In
later
general,
on,
we're talking in
but
general.
special uses also, I mean, I think you can impose those hour conditions on special uses if it's one of those properties that is subject to a special use. So, again, those are great feedback and thought, food for thought at a later date, but since we've got time limits on this, we're gonna kind of move forward a little bit, so.
So briefly, I wanted to just, I know we're familiar with protest petition. I don't know how many of you looked at the protest petition, but I wanted to spend a minute. Again, the protest petition is found in section 1606 of our ordinance. And again, it's in the Enabling Act at 125.3403. And this is the protest petition for McClure. I don't know if anyone looked at it before. Whoever's protesting has to either have 20%, it either needs to be 20% of the owners of land in the proposed change area, which doesn't apply to the McClure location, or 20% of landowners in an area extending 100 feet from the property line. So that's what is depicted on the map.
Not including right away.
Not including the right of way. I forgot. Yes. So if you compare, so that's the McClure. And if you compare the one for the protest storage for the easy storage, they were unable to meet their 20% because they. How do you use the little there? So they only got this only 9.6% of the signers in that 100-foot radius.
And just with protest petitions as well, I mean, it doesn't mean that they can't do the, it doesn't mean you can't rezone it. What it means is you need a supermajority. The citizenry doesn't really understand that. That's something that we try and explain to them, but that's really what it is it's just imposing a supermajority.
And really the only reason they were successful in McClure is they got the property owner right here to the north. So, I don't know, I remember the first time when I knew the protest petition was coming in and I read the statute, I don't even know what that means. Brent, help.
It's poorly written.
But
Yes.
But once you see it depicted, it makes sense. And when you have Alex Bielak in our GIS department put together for us, it makes sense. So thank goodness for Alex. Lastly, the last topic I'm going to discuss just briefly is site plan approval. I'm going to skip through the intent because I think we're all familiar with site plan approval. But I know what we question every once in a while is when Alan or me or Lori tell you, well, if it complies with the zoning ordinance, you have to approve it. And I wanted to call out that, again, that comes from the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. It is not just me or Lori or Alan making that up. It is not just something, language that was put in the zoning ordinance. Again, it comes from the statute. And that's 125.35015. The site plan shall be approved. It's mandatory language. It's not may be approved. It's shall be approved if it contains information required by the zoning ordinance and is in compliance with the conditions imposed under the zoning ordinance, other statutorily authorized and properly adopted local unit of government plan development documents, other applicable ordinances of the state and federal statutes. So we talk about this, the Planning Commission can impose reasonable conditions, but they have to be related to the zoning ordinance. If the plan complies with the zoning ordinance, it needs to be approved by this body. And again, I know we have.
Okay, you know what I'm going to ask.
Go ahead. I'm glad Lori's here.
So what I'm going to ask is, it says it shall be approved if it meets the zoning ordinance and other statutorily authorized and properly adopted local unit of blah, 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 blah. But doesn't that also include the Enabling Act language of public health, welfare, safety, morality?
Yeah.
It includes that.
Well,
It includes it.
I guess one of the things that, so you have to approve it if it satisfies the ordinance, and it is presumed that your ordinances have already taken into account the health, safety, and welfare. So your setbacks already take into account the health, safety, and welfare. That's not to say that you shouldn't, I mean, again, you get a proposal and it's a horrible proposal, you amend the ordinance then after that. I mean, that's the remedy. Of course, it won't help that site plan from being approved, but it may help other plans from being approved. And another tool that you have as well, and you guys are really good at this, even though you have to approve it, and you all know that you have to approve it, you will find us trying to be as helpful as we can be, because I think you can ask applicants. They can always say no, but I think that you can ask applicants to provide additional conditions. Now, you know, we're going to try and help you as much as we can, but just know, at the end of the day, if they meet all of the ordinance requirements, you have to approve it. And if they aren't persuaded that this is in their best interest to offer this additional condition that you would like to see, you have to approve it.
This
So.
is one of the most difficult jobs that a planning commissioner has to get their arms around. And I remember even when we were in, you probably do, with the transit center in the city of Birmingham, and I remember staff, or not administration, telling us that we had to approve it. And there was a lot of pushback from both Birmingham as well as Troy planning commissioners. And this is the one it's the most difficult to accept. And I know we have to accept it.
It is, but it's also the thing that we're going to lose if you don't approve a site plan and they sue us.
Right.
We're going to lose because we have nothing to base it on. So again, you can make all of the comments, you know, and again, if there's something that needs to be changed in our zoning ordinances, let's get them changed. I mean, let's get it changed so that it does protect the health, safety, and welfare. But if it meets the site plan conditions, you are obligated ultimately to approve it.
So maybe a good example of that would be the recent cluster zoning ordinance that we approved. And so far, we got quite some nice projects that come in, but maybe there might be a project that comes in that's just really lousy, that we really don't like. And if there's something about it that we don't like, that might make us go back and tweak or kind of twist our arm and say, we gotta go back and look at this cluster ordinance because we got a project in here that is totally out of left field and we didn't expect this. Is
Right.
a good example.
If there's no discretion, and some of our ordinances have discretion. I mean, some of them do have some discretion, and if there's discretion, by all means, exercise your discretion. But there are some that have setbacks and have, you know, and if they meet all of the terms, you have to approve it. Ultimately. I mean, again, you can try and it's to their benefit as well. I mean, you're helping them out by encouraging different things. Because this body of knowledge that is here sitting at this table is tremendous, and you've seen a lot of things, and you have a lot of different expertises that you represent. So, again, they should be appreciative because, again, they want their development to be successful. Just know at the end of the day that if it meets it and they don't agree with your conditions, you have to approve it.
I think one of the, again, just to piggyback on what Mr. Edmonds said, one of the really difficult tasks that we're given here as a body is if it meets the conditions, regardless of the opposition of the neighborhood and the neighbors, they can be very loud in opposition, but if all those conditions are met, we are obligated to approve that project, right?
And because it is so difficult, rely on us. Ask us that question. Is there any way, since it meets all of the conditions, is there any way that we can reject this? You ask us that question, we will provide the cover to you, because the answer, of course, is you have to approve it if it meets all of the conditions. So it takes it off of you, puts it on us, puts it on the law, and, you know, sometimes the neighbors need to hear that. So by all means, ask the attorney you know, if it gets to that, to, again, to make it a little easier for you. We're trying to help out as much as we can. There's a lot that we can't do for you. We know that you get a lot of abuse. We know that you put a lot of time into this, but that is one of the things that we can help you with.
Okay, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on variances. I call it out here because as this body knows that if a site plan needs a variance, we won't approve it until it gets the variance from the zoning board of appeals. Zoning board of appeals is found under Article 15, and it has certain delegated duties, what they hear and decide. The appeals of administrative decisions, requests for interpretation, requests for dimensional and other non-use variances, requests for use variances, and any other matter that falls under this ordinance. And sometimes we have questions regarding site visits, and I want to stress that it's important and appropriate that you go out and visit sites that come up for your review. But I want to just make sure we all are on the same page. You must have express permission from property owners. Brent, I meant to ask you this earlier. In the application process, do landowners give express permission
Right. They do.
typically?
I think they do. I think we put that on the application.
I think we added that.
We did.
Yeah.
After the last educational session, we added that on there.
So I guess my point is you have that express permission because that's part and parcel of the application process. We do ask that you not go as a group or Open Meeting Act violations. Lori's going to get into that a little bit. And it's important also that you not speak to the property owner or the neighbors or the applicant, him or herself, because sometimes the applicant is not necessarily the owner, so it could be a different person. But that's because we want everyone who comes to the table to have the same information. Go ahead.
Oh, just on that, you can blame that one on us as well. And again, you don't want to be rude, but you can just say, you know what, we would really love to have everybody at the table hear that same information. And so there are a number of ways that you can do that. You can come to the meeting, you can email all of the planning commissioners, you can get that information to all of the planning commissioners. But if I have to convey your thoughts, I don't want to be put in that position. And so you just say that we've recommended that all of their thoughts should be presented to the planning commission as a whole, and that way everybody has the same information in deciding those issues.
I know that at Padma, Ms. Koopa, she's not here, but I know she's had concerns because she's had people actually reach out to her and contact her individually. And maybe you've all had that experience, but I specifically can recall Padma being concerned about it. And obviously listen, like Lori said, be polite, but I guess the important thing to remember too is share that information with the table. Say, hey, I got this phone call from someone, or hey, when I was out at the site visit, the applicant came up to me and wanted to give me this information. So it's sort of a disclosure. Just let the rest of us know what you heard. And again, sometimes we're asked, what am I looking for when I go out on a site visit? And these are some of the things you should be looking for: traffic conditions and patterns, the characteristics of the neighborhood, what else is going on in the area in terms of land use, and any natural features of the property. So with that,
Yes.
I'm going to turn over the rest of this to Lori.
And I'm going to talk about consent judgments because Julie has
have
not
not.
had one because, again, because of the other tools that we have. We have conditional rezonings, which have kind of taken the place of consent judgments. We also have the planned unit development. The Grand Sakwa development at Maple and Coolidge, that is a consent judgment. That was done before we had a PUD ordinance, and so we didn't have the ability to do mixed use. So that, because you have your commercial and you have your residential, that was done as a consent judgment. They are, also we get sued occasionally, and sometimes if we get sued, sometimes we can resolve it without allowing them to do everything that they're looking for. Maybe we can negotiate. So it is an opportunity for us to negotiate. We do have consent judgments throughout the city. They are binding. That is the zoning. So it used to be single family, now it's consent judgment, and they are all are in the zoning map. You will see that they are marked. It's marked as consent judgment zoning.
Just like PUDs are.
Right, just like PUDs are. And I wanted to talk about referendum and initiative. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but that is something that is allowed. This is if you make changes to an ordinance, and there is the ability, if somebody doesn't like that, they can file a referendum petition to change whatever it is. And again, you guys don't have the final say with ordinances. City Council does, but I just wanted to let you know that there is a referendum initiative. There's been recent news in the Somerset Gazette about a potential initiative petition for limiting City Council's ability with respect to the development of the Civic Center. So I wanted to put this in here, that those are two options that are authorized, not only under state law, but also under our city charter.
Why is the signature level so low?
They were amended, actually, in 2004 and 2005. There were, and it was actually passed by about 80% of the vote in making it easier to get an initiative or a referendum signature on there. So yeah, those have been amended. Like I said, 2004, 2005. I was just looking at that the other day for another.
That's just to bring it to a public vote.
It is. It's just to bring it to a public vote, and then that's just it's a way. If it's a super majority, if it's 25% or more, the actual ordinance is suspended, so you can't enforce that ordinance. It's really unlikely that that's happened. I've never seen that happen in my 22 years here, but it's in there. It's part of what we have there. So conflicts of interest, and you guys are really good at conflicts of interest. The thing, the third point here, when in doubt, disclosure. Disclose. And we do appreciate a lot of you have contacted us ahead of time, and we want to continue to do that. We will walk you through. We will also kind of give you, what we would say in the meeting. If you give us the facts, you call us, and Julie or Alan or I, any one of us, you can talk to us. And if you're not sure, always disclose. And I think it's a great idea to disclose it at the Planning Commission meeting as well, because you don't want somebody later on saying, well, yeah, but you didn't say this. You want to have it right out there in front that, and then if the Planning Commission as a whole thinks that your connection is too close, then Planning Commission as a whole can excuse you. So you've got that cover. You've said, hey, this is my relationship, and if you think I should be disqualified, or if you think that there's a conflict, then pass a vote and have them not participate in that particular decision. Also, you guys are really good with this when there is a conflict. We ask that you not be in the room, and certainly not at the table. If you have a conflict and the Planning Commission decides that you should not be participating, we want you to just leave the room completely. We think that that's the best practice.
On that note, why is there a different standard for the city council? They don't have to leave. They don't usually. They don't leave the room.
Well, they should be, and I would encourage that. It's a best practice, certainly to leave the room. Certainly you shouldn't.
They're aware of that?
Yes, I do the same training for them as what I'm doing here for you. So, yes, and then, again, it's only from that one item. So, if you're in the back room or whatever, somebody hopefully will come back and get you so that you can participate on the rest of it. Because we do need to have a number there to participate, because I think that the best decisions are made when there are lots of different perspectives. Another thing too, that if you are disqualified, you can have a representative there. Just be very cautious so that it doesn't look, if it's your property that, is involved, you may have, I'm not saying you're giving up your property interests, your personal property interests, but it's best if you have somebody else representing you. Please don't go and represent yourself in front, as one of the members of the public when you are a planning commissioner. It just, again, the appearance of impropriety is not good. So. Conflict of interest, I just wanted to let you know, it comes from the Michigan Constitution as well as, the next slide, as well as state statutes. And you can't, if there's a financial or a personal interest. Most times it's going to be a financial interest. If it's financial, that's a clear case. Absolutely, you shouldn't. If you have a percentage interest in a in a development company, you absolutely shouldn't be participating in that. Now, if you have a little bit of an interest in your retirement plan in a person who is proposing a development, that's not going to rise to the level of being a financial interest. I mean, depending, of course, on your percentage. If it's all of your portfolio, then yes. But if it's just as part of your retirement and you happen to have a little bit of, let's say it's one of the auto companies or something, you have stock in an auto company, that's not going to be a financial interest. You can't have incompatible offices. The exception, of course, is that we do have a ZBA representative here, but you can't have incompatible positions, obviously. And we've already talked about the applicants. When you're going to the site visits, again, encourage them to get the information to all of the Planning Commission members through Brent, preferably, because not only do you all get access to all of that same information, but it also becomes part of the record. And we really like to have great records. We like to have all of that, all of the citizen comments included as part of the record. It was really helpful, and hopefully will be very helpful in the recent lawsuit that we're working on. So this is the Code of Ethics for City Council, and I wanted to talk about that, but I do have for you, just in case you didn't remember, you signed this a while ago, and you don't have to sign it every year. I'm just going to hand out the one that all of you agreed to be bound by. But I wanted to touch on the one that is for City Council, because I think that there are a couple of things on here that do apply to the board and committees as well. Obviously, confidentiality of privileged information. It's rare that you have privileged information, but if you did, you do have an obligation to respect the confidentiality of that and to not disclose it. Certainly, if you get something from us and it's confidential, it's going to be on blue paper, so you're going to know that it's confidential, and we're going to say privileged and confidential, and it's going to be really marked on there. Most times, we're going to be collecting it back afterwards as well, so that, again, there's no inadvertent disclosure. It's rare that we will send you a privileged and confidential communication, but it has happened before, so just you have to respect the confidentiality of that. You all know this, you speak as an individual only, and you are good at saying, this is my opinion only. You cannot speak on behalf of the Planning Commission. Obviously work together, encourage the free expression of opinion by all members. Now, this is one of those things that, again, you are a representative of the city. And so all of you should have the opportunity to speak and to express your opinions as they relate to the proposals. Hopefully, they will be on the proposals alone, and they won't be on tangents and things that are not within the purview of your responsibilities. But hopefully, and I don't see a problem with this body. There have been past city councils where which encouraged this to be included in the ethics code. But it is in there, so just be aware of that. Obviously, make every effort to attend all meetings, because it's really important to have you here, and then also because so many things are brought back. It's not a one-time thing. So, obviously you have personal things going on and you can't attend every one of them, but as long as you're making every effort, that is greatly appreciated. Rendering decisions, just on the available facts and independent judgment. I think you're all good at that. You're not going to, you're going to do what's in the best interest of the city and the Planning Commission. Okay, Jim, next. Sorry. You all do this, you're all prepared when you come to your meeting. We talked about conflicts. And, don't use this for personal benefit or for the benefit of your family members, obviously. Be careful with your electronic media, emails and things. Just remember, whatever you write, it is likely to be included as a document in a lawsuit that, that we may have. So just always keep that in mind, that emails or, anything that's written, you should always be cautious and know that it ultimately may need to be produced. So, so certainly be aware of that. Yes.
Does the same standard, well, like with government bodies, elected officials, apply to us? And I'm using this in the context, supposing we have a split decision on a decision, and I vote no, and the majority of the planning commissioners vote yes. Am I required to support that decision in all other conversations I might have with other citizens?
You are required to say that the decision of the planning commission is whatever it is. I mean, that's so.
But I can't say it was not my decision.
It's preferable that you don't. I mean, it really is. And some of these are just, it's just trying to support the planning commission decisions. It's important, whatever you decide, we're going to support you as long as you have exercised your discretion and as long as, it's our job to uphold the decisions that you make. And we're going to try and do that. And it helps us a great deal if all of you, once a decision, again, healthy dialogue, healthy debate, and then, of course, put your votes on, and your votes will be on record. If you voted against it, your vote is on record as voting against it. But it helps us that once that decision is done, we move forward, and that is the decision of the Planning Commission, and that is what you deal with after that. So, we prefer to not have you out there conversing and saying, yeah, I didn't vote for it, but, everybody else did. We prefer to just have you embrace the decision. Again, you're on record as not supporting it, but, again, you guys are the face, you're a very important body to this city, and what you do is likely to, sometimes there are lawsuits that involve your work. And so it's really very important that you try and embrace the decision once it's been made. Also, be really cautious in the meetings and with your conversations and with your dialogue with the citizenry. The citizenry, they don't know as much of this information as you do, and I think you have to kind of have kid gloves almost with the citizenry. I think that will serve you well if you do. I'm not saying that you have to agree, and I'm not saying that they should abuse you. I'm not saying that at all. I think if there's abuse occurring, the chair, there are tools for that, and we can kind of go into that as well about how to deal with abuse. But it's really important that you maintain your professionalism, that they don't think that you are denigrating the speakers or the applicants. Again, you're listening to all of the material that's being presented. You are, you have opinions. You are expressing your opinions, hopefully in a very diplomatic way. Diplomacy is one of the things that you really should be engaging in, and I would encourage you to do whatever you can to be as diplomatic as possible for the members of the public, for the members, for any applicant as well. Again, not saying that you have to roll over, not saying that they have the right to abuse you, but again, it's the impression, and you don't want the newspaper coming in and saying, that one of you, was abusive, or that the planning commission didn't listen to them. You really want them to feel like you've at least heard them. If they feel that you have heard them, even if you disagree with them, that goes a long way. So, so again, I encourage you to use as much diplomacy as you can in your public hearing process. It's really important that you do. And then also, I think, you know, the old saying that you catch, you know, more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. You know, that's true, and maybe you can get information. A lot of what you do is make recommendations to City Council. If you're developing, you know, if you have a good rapport, you're providing more information that can be passed along to City Council. And, you know, so again, just, this is, again, the code of ethics that's for City Council, but I think it really does apply to the Planning Commission as well, because you carry on a lot of the same responsibilities as City Council does.
Can I just interject real quick? I'll be brief. I think what Lori's talking about, sometimes when we have people from the public who want to make comment, you know, they're waiting for a response. They want a response. You don't have to respond. I know that what we do sometimes is we engage in this back and forth, and you don't have to do that. And especially if someone's being contentious. Brent brought up the example of how people were sort of attacking Ms. Cruz during the McClure. You know, and it's a hard thing to sit back and, okay, but we don't, and I think you did a great job of not firing back. But I think we have to, you know, sometimes we don't need to do the back and forth. Let the public say their piece and let it, you know.
And a lot of that falls on the chair, and I'm sorry, Mr. Harpedian, to, you know, to put all of this responsibility on you, but a lot of it does fall on you to try and control. And if you do see abuse occurring, you know, one of the great tools that you have, you can always ask for a recess. You know, and of course, if we've seen a situation recently where the chair actually was also not able to step back. And so all of you have the ability to call point of order. If you say point of order, you all have a responsibility to kind of make sure that the meetings are run professionally and that they're not being disrupted. So again, recess is a great opportunity for you. If things are getting a little contentious, ask for a 5-minute recess. Now, don't have everybody, you know, ask for a 5-minute recess and then everybody go in the back and then not talk to it, because then they're going to assume that an Open Meetings Act violation is occurring. So be cautious and you know, only, you know, no more than a quorum back there. But yes, it's good.
When is it appropriate to have citizenry escorted out?
Again, if your safety is of paramount importance, and so if you are feeling that it's escalating too much, then, you know, obviously the chair would usually give a warning. If they don't comply with the warning, get the police officers down here, and don't wait until it gets to that point. I mean, usually you can tell if it's a really charged environment. If there are a lot of people and it's really charged, ask to have the police officers here. I mean, and Brent or Julie or, you know,
We've done that before for ZBA. I mean, we've alerted the police officers, you know, before the meeting, and they've come to the meeting and stood in the back. And even their presence, I mean, and you know, the use of force continuum, uniformed police officer presence is the, you know, bare minimum use of force, but even that can sort of deflect the situation. So if we know something's going to be charged, we can.
So does it have to be, I'm worried for my safety? I mean, it can't.
No, it can be a disruptive meeting.
Because we've had, in the McClure meeting was a prime example of people that were beyond disruptive, wouldn't be quiet when asked, were approaching where all of us were sitting, felt like, the rest of you might have to sit in your seat, but I don't have to sit in my seat because I have plenty of things to say and I have to point out to the Planning Commission what they're doing wrong. I mean, the fact that that continued to go on for the hours that it did, would you ever do that in court? No. It's a public hearing. There are rules and there's decorum. And I expect people in that room to behave as such. And I'm not interested in giving people who can't a pass.
Right. Absolutely. And you shouldn't. Again, it goes both ways. I mean, you know, you have to you know, be responsive to their comments, but they only get one opportunity. You don't have to give them multiple opportunities to
I'm
comment.
down with that. No, I'm down
Yes.
with that.
So, but again, it kind of falls to the chair, and I know you get to have the benefit of doing this now. I think you have a gavel. Is there a gavel up there? I mean, I think use the gavel.
We don't have one here.
Give warnings as well. And again, if the chair, sometimes it's difficult. I mean, I know how difficult it is to be a chair, so you may have to help the chair. If there are so many people and it's just, you're trying to get control and it's not working, again, I would just take a recess, then I would get the cops down there because they are going to help with the decorum. But, the warnings are, you give warnings ahead of time, say, you know what, we're, this is the last warning, we are going to call the police officers down here, these are the rules of decorum, we're going to take a break, and then if you don't abide by those rules, then we're going to ask that you leave. I mean, you can have, you can make those statements, and then, now, don't escort anyone out yourselves. Let the police officers do it, because then they make that call and they have that ability, and they're armed. So, but yeah, Mr. President.
Just a question. So should we be interacting with the citizenry at all? I thought we shouldn't. I thought that they made their comment to the body.
Right.
And we just listened.
That's what you do. Yes.
Okay.
But they need to feel that you're listening.
No, understood.
Right.
Understood. But sometimes they pose a question like, "What about my kids?
Right.
What about the wildlife?" That's
Right.
not. We don't answer those questions.
And maybe we need to have the statement revised in the beginning. You do read a statement, and maybe we need to put on there, this body will not be responding to any inquiries. It's an opportunity, public comment is to provide you with an opportunity to present, your 3 minutes or whatever. So maybe we put that in writing as well, and especially if it's a contentious issue, it doesn't hurt to remind them. We don't answer questions, and the chair would be the most logical person that would do that, but anybody could. Anybody could say.
Sometimes we'll have people say, "Aren't you going to answer my question?" And that's an opportunity for you to say,
This is our procedure.
we don't need to answer the
Our
question.
procedure doesn't allow for us to do that.
I think we had that in writing, and I've used it on public information meetings,
Public
especially on
hearings.
McClure, on a
Right.
couple of other ones that were really contentious. We knew
Mhm.
they were going to be.
Right.
And I guess sometimes that just kind of is there, and not everybody
Mhm.
takes it in consideration as something that should be, that applies to them.
Right, and it's okay to repeat it, throughout, to get control, and it's okay to ask for the police officers to be here, because, as Julie said, armed officers sometimes will be of a great benefit to all of you in keeping everything, a little less riled up, so. And I've done this, OMA and FOIA. There have been minor changes to both OMA and FOIA since our last meeting, but I'm not going to go into all of them because I recognize that the time is running late here. But all of these were enacted after Watergate. Some of you probably were not around when Watergate was, but the rest of us were. Julie might even be on that, on that spot, on the other side of that. But, obviously, everything that we do needs to be open to the public. So all of your meetings have to be open to the public. There's an opportunity to comment. They can actually comment on something that has nothing to do with the planning commission in the public comment portion, not in the, petitions, but, just, you can limit that, you can adopt rules. If you find a lot of unruly meetings, we'll look at your rules and we'll help you with that, and we'll try and help hone in and limit what the public comment portions are. But you do have to allow it. And the right to attend a meeting, I just want to make sure that you know that the right to attend a meeting also means the right to record a meeting, to have a stenographer here transcribing it all, to video it, whatever they want to do, to take pictures, whatever they want to do, that it's open to the public. Accommodating a crowd, you've been really good about that. If you think that there's going to be a big crowd, we've had a situation where we were in here and then there was a big crowd, so you move across, you just post it so that everybody knows. Just the big thing to keep in mind with the Open Meetings Act, make sure that people feel comfortable walking in. You see that the door is open. If the door is not open, you have that lovely sign that says meeting in progress, please enter quietly. If you ever need to shut the door, please make sure that that sign is out there, because again, it invites people to come in. Another thing with this room, make sure that that door is not locked, because sometimes when you shut that door, it locks. Obviously, that's not open to the public, and that would not be a good situation. So just beware of that. I won't go through all of these things because you will never have an Open Meetings Act violation, because you are all so wonderful and you've all been educated on this a number of different times. But it is something that the Attorney General or any person or the prosecuting attorney can file an Open Meetings Act lawsuit. And of course, the bad thing about these is if they win, we have to pay their attorney fees. So, even if it's not, even if they don't get a lot of money, they can maybe invalidate decisions if there's a violation of the Open Meetings Act, and they can get attorney fees as well. So, and there's also just the whole general, you don't want to be seen as, a body that's conducting meetings in secret. You want to be as open as you can. You have nothing to hide. You want to have all of this out there,
If they lose, do you get?
No, unfortunately.
Edmonds, I wish.
Yes, unfortunately, no, we don't.
Doesn't work
we
in
do
the
not.
reverse.
Yes.
How does the Open Meetings Act reconcile with closed sessions of city council?
There is a section that does allow for closed sessions, and they are limited. One of them is collective bargaining agreements. One of them is to consider real estate proposals. One of them is personnel evaluation. So there are 268 it has a number of times when it is permissible to go into a closed session. We have, I think, on maybe one occasion gone into a closed session to discuss an attorney-client memorandum. Very, very rare that you're going to do that. But if it happens, we're going to work with you on the process for doing that. Okay? And then also the Freedom of Information Act, as I said before, your emails presume that they're going to be public documents, because they may be. If it's anything that's relating to your job as a planning commissioner, they are going to be subject to disclosure. So just a couple of things. If you have a lot of communications, especially the attorneys, you may want to be separating your planning commission in a separate account from your other, and there are other professionals as well. But you don't want to have a judge giving access to all of the contents of your laptops or your computers. So if you have it in a separate file, if you keep all of your planning commission communications in one file, it's going to be a lot easier for us to just produce that file. Also, if you needed us to keep it, if it's something in addition to what Brent sends out, then you can feel free to send it to Brent as well. Hopefully you're going to be doing that anyways if it's citizen communication, because you want everybody to have the benefit of that. And one thing I did want to touch on in Open Meetings Act, I'm sorry I didn't do this, but there are meetings like this here, but also an email exchange can be a meeting. And it's not going to be posted. So if you do have a quorum of people who are communicating in an email or a chat room or anything like that, that is also a potential meeting. And so don't do it. Delete the reply to all key from your computers, and don't use it ever, please, when you're doing the Planning Commission stuff, because we don't want an inadvertent violation of the Open Meetings Act. That doesn't mean that you can't send a communication to Brent or Julie or I or Alan. You can do that. And then we can send it on to all of the planning commissioners. It's that dialogue that you need to be careful of. Okay, so if you have something that you think should be communicated, get it to Brent, get it to Julie, get it to me, and we'll get it to all of the planning commissioners. But just you don't want that dialogue and that back and forth. So And
Sorry, I think I skipped that slide.
and we've gone really fast on all of these things, but if you have any questions, we're happy to address them, and I know that you have already, we're going to be giving you the slide presentation as well, so that you will have it. And then, Julie, you want to get to your last?
I just have one question. I
Yeah,
think you said
sure.
it. So the Open Meetings Act, the issue would be if a quorum of
Right.
us was talking.
Right.
Not if
Mhm.
one or two of us were
Right.
talking to each other.
Yes, it is a quorum, and now you may be at like a grand opening
Obviously, you should
event.
be careful about all communication.
Right, because there's going to be an appearance. If they see that there are 4 or 5 of you together, people are going to have the appearance that you're talking about planning commission. No, even if you're talking about your kids or anything other than that, they're going to presume, and especially if it's a very contentious issue, you don't want to give them any ammunition. So, try not to. But you can, if you're all at a seminar, if there's more than a quorum of you at a seminar, that's fine. Just don't deliberate on any of the items that are coming before you. And again, just be mindful that there's going to be an appearance that you probably are discussing planning commission business if there are more than a quorum of
When
you
city
present.
management, 3 or 4 years ago now, decided to do the retreats, it made Lori and me very nervous. Because those have to be posted. Those
Right.
retreats are posted as open meetings. If someone from the community, from the citizenry wanted to come and sit through those retreat sessions, they could. The very first retreat session we had, there was a bus tour, and we had a debate. Do we have to have seats available on this darn bus in case someone from the citizenry? And
We did.
You need to have seats available for the public. So.
We always err on the side of caution as well, and we
Right.
err on the side of pro-disclosure, and you'll see that we're very conservative in the advice that we give.
You had a plan B to charter a few buses if you had.
I don't know if we had a plan B. I think plan B was for certain people to give up their seats.
Yes, yeah. And fortunately, it didn't come, but we did have members of the public that, have attended.
Especially that first year, because it was the first year that we did it, and people were curious,
Right.
what are they doing?
Right, yep. So, and with that, I think the last slide, Julie, is your resources.
Oh, yeah, these are the resources. I know Ms. Cruz asked for copies of the Zoning Enabling Act and the Mission Planning Enabling Act, and make sure that we get those. So if you want copies of anything else, I can either send links or we can send PDF. I will take responsibility for not having printouts. I didn't want to waste paper. So I told Brent that I wasn't going to have anything printed out, but I can obviously send links or PDF, everything to anyone.
With respect to the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act and the Planning Enabling, I don't think I need the whole act.
It's not long. I mean,
I was
it's
gonna
only
say,
14 pages for one and 20.
I was just thinking, you
23.
pulled out some sections that you clearly thought were worthy of discussion. I would just like a few minutes to review those discussion-worthy.
And that's why I put what zoning ordinance goes with what statute.
I think rather than having the entire copies of all those acts and ordinances, I would prefer a copy of your slides.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll send a copy of the, yes, yes.
Yep, absolutely, and that, I think, was our intent, to either get it to you, let us know if it's better electronically, or if it's better to give you a hard copy, you just let us know, and we will facilitate that and get that to you.
One other final question. At Christmas time, we typically, there'll be like an informal invitation to go to a bar or something to have a drink afterwards. Is that precluded?
Again, that's a social gathering, and I presume that if there is a contentious issue that is before you, that people will be saying that you are discussing and deliberating at that social gathering. Not that it's necessarily a violation of the Open Meetings Act, but there will be a presumption that you are. So if you are at a social gathering, do not discuss anything that comes before the body, but just again, know that there may be a perception that you are. Even if you're not, there may be a perception that you are.
And I'm sure the city council has similar. questions.
They do, and that's the advice that I give to them as well. Mhm. And Brent, was there, we didn't get a chance.
Well, if there's any follow-up questions, get them to myself, Julie, or Lori, and they'll answer the questions and share the answers with everybody.
Okay.
I know that was longer than 7 minutes.
But it was worth it.
Thanks, Mr. Evans.
So,
I'd like to go on record and state that I know from personal experience that every single person at this table possesses the communication skills and knowledge to talk about subjects other than planning commission.
yeah. Of course.
We can do it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. So, well, again, thank you for the opportunity to come here. I know it's been 3 years, so we do appreciate the opportunity and.
Come more often.
Yeah, yeah.
Slides.
Well, and fortunately, you just had one other item on the agenda, so,
Yeah,
so that
it worked
it's,
out.
so it worked out. But again, any questions that you have, please, we encourage you. We would love to have you contact us beforehand, especially if there's an issue that you have about a meeting. Let us know. I know, Julie meets with Brent, and we've done that for a long time, and we try and see what the issues might be, but please, let us know. We're happy to help.
Ms. Malone, I know many of us were heavily involved in the planning for the transit center. Can you give us, or what can you tell us about what has been recently resolved with buses?
Yes, it is resolved. The buses have started. Smart buses have started, and there are limits to the buses. So for the first 5 years, they are limited to, I think it's 22 buses, maximum of 22 buses a day. And then after 5 years, it will increase incrementally. So every 5 years, there's an increase up to the third, the third. But SMART also has to prove that there is a community demand for an increase before they can increase the buses at the transit center property.
Prove to who, Lori?
Does that include the trolley also?
The trolley is actually not part of the fixed bus service. So the trolley is not part of the 22 trips per day. So the trolley.
The trolley cannot go to.
No, the trolley can, yes. The
Okay.
trolley can, yes.
Oh, okay.
And it doesn't count against
The,
the 20.
the issue with Grand Saqua was really the fixed larger buses. They didn't ever have an issue with the trolley, but SMART was precluded by the judge's order, so we couldn't have the trolley there on the interim, but now it can.
Who does it need to be proved to the community need for the buses?
They have to prove it to the city of Troy. And also Grand Saqua, but to the city of Troy. They have to demonstrate that there's community demand. So,
Okay,
All right,
thank you,
well, thank you.
Attorney Bloom and Mr. Bree. We appreciate the presentation, that was very informative. And I guess we'll just move on to item number 7, public comment items on the current agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on any item on tonight's agenda? If not, we'll just move on to planning commission comments. And we'll start with Mr. Faison.
No comments.
Mr. Tate.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Cruz.
No, thank you.
Mr.
Just one quick thought regarding that fire in London with the aluminum panels sandwiched with plastic. I think we've all looked at those on buildings that we've approved. I realize they say it has to be, it's not approved above 25 feet. So just something to think about. We have all those aluminum panels, but they're sandwiched with the plastic. They are fire hazard. So just something to think about when we go forward with those kind of proposals that come before us.
That's public health, welfare, and safety.
Yeah, it is. The other thing is, this panel worked on very diligently and approved Eddie V's. How come we weren't invited to the grand opening?
I wasn't either, I don't know. Yeah.
Why?
VIP seating?
I
Go ahead, there. I'm done. Go ahead.
I have no comment.
Nothing.
The 19th of June.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.